You don't belong here. The words cut through the polished lobby like a blade. Afternoon sunlight spilled through the tall glass windows of 1847, Peachtree Street, reflecting across the marble floors and brass elevator doors. The entire lobby smelled faintly of cleaning polish and cold air from the central ventilation system. Troy Kendrick stepped forward. At 6'3" and nearly 240 pounds, the head of building security looked like a wall in a black uniform. The radio clipped to his belt crackled once before falling silent again. His hand hovered near the handcuffs on his belt. "I've been doing this job 15 years, Troy said slowly. "I know exactly who belongs in this building." The woman standing in front of him didn't move. She stood barely 5'6" in worn sneakers and a grey sweater, holding a leather bag that had clearly been used for years. No jewelry. No designer labels. Nothing that suggested wealth or power. Nothing that suggested someone who belonged inside a 12-story commercial tower worth more than $14 million. Troy said, voice tightening. "I'm going to ask you one more time. Leave the building, or I will remove you from this building." The woman tilted her head slightly and studied him. Not scared. Not nervous. Just watching him the way someone might watch a problem they had already solved. "You're going to want to check your chain of command very carefully," she said calmly. Troy laughed. The sound echoed across the marble lobby and bounced off the high glass walls. "What chain of command?" he said. "I'm the chain of command here." What Troy Kendrick did not know was this. Every employee in this building, the security team, the maintenance contractors, the property management company, all ultimately worked for the woman standing in front of him. He did not know she had purchased the building 3 months earlier. For $14.2 million. He did not know that every word he was saying was already being recorded. And he definitely did not know that in less than an hour, when he dragged her out of this lobby in handcuffs, he would trigger a chain of events that would destroy his career, expose years of discrimination inside this building, and launch a federal investigation. But right now, Troy Kendrick saw only one thing. A black woman who did not look like she belonged. So he reached for her arm. 4 hours earlier, at exactly 2:04 p.m., Yolanda Briggs walked through the front doors of 1847, Peachtree Street like any other visitor. The lobby was exactly as she remembered from the listing photographs. Italian marble floors. A water feature along the eastern wall. Brass elevator doors polished to a mirror shine. 12 floors of premium Atlanta commercial real estate, built in 1987 and renovated twice since then. She paused just inside the entrance and reached into her bag. A small leather notebook came out. Her pen moved quickly across the page. 2 security guards at front desk. 1 roving guard. Camera above elevator bank. Front entrance door propped open by cleaning staff. Visitor sign policy unclear. 23 years in commercial real estate had trained her eye to notice details others ignored. Buildings were not just structures to her. They were systems. Systems that could succeed. Or systems that quietly failed over time. She did not stop at the security desk. She simply walked toward the elevators. "Excuse me." The voice came from behind her. Young. Male. Already suspicious. Yolanda turned. The guard looked barely 22, his uniform still stiff and new. His eyes moved quickly across her clothes, her shoes, and her bag. Evaluating. Calculating. "Do you have an appointment?" he asked. 3 people passed between them while he spoke. A white man in a charcoal suit. A woman carrying a designer handbag. Another businessman checking his phone. None of them were stopped. None of them were questioned. Yolanda noticed. She always noticed. "I'm here to look around," she said calmly. The guard frowned. "This is private property." Yolanda pointed quietly toward the sign behind him. "Visitors welcome." The guard hesitated. Then his hand moved slowly toward his radio. "I'm going to need to see some ID." Yolanda held his gaze for 3 seconds. Then she turned and stepped into the elevator. Behind her, the guard spoke quietly into his radio. "Suspicious individual in the lobby. Black female." The elevator doors slid shut. Yolanda pressed the button for the 8th floor. Inside the elevator, she opened her notebook again and wrote one more line. First assumption made within 60 seconds of entry. The elevator hummed upward. Floor 2. Floor 3. Floor 4. None of the people working inside 1847 Peachtree Street knew what was about to happen next. They did not know the woman inside that elevator was the new owner of the building. They did not know that every mistake they made over the next hour would be documented. And they definitely did not know that within 47 minutes security would place the owner of the building in handcuffs and push her into a police car outside. But the moment those elevator doors opened on the 8th floor, the situation inside that building would begin moving toward a disaster none of them could stop. And what happened on that floor next is where the real trouble began. Stay with us and follow for the next part, because the confrontation on the 8th floor is where everything spiraled out of control. The elevator doors opened with a soft metallic sound. Yolanda Briggs stepped out onto the 8th floor of 1847 Peachtree Street and paused for a moment in the hallway. It was quiet. Too quiet for a commercial floor that should have been busy in the middle of the afternoon. Half the lights were dimmed. The hallway carpet showed signs of wear. A faint mechanical rattle came from somewhere above the ceiling panels. Yolanda slowly pulled her notebook back out of her bag. Her pen moved quickly. 3 vacant units visible from hallway. Ceiling panel cracked near vac vent. Carpet stains near elevator bank. Maintenance neglect visible. She walked down the hallway slowly, examining the doors. 2 offices were dark. Another had a for lease sign taped inside the glass. A 4th unit had its door slightly open. Yolanda paused beside an electrical outlet near one of the empty units and crouched down. The outlet plate was discolored. A faint burn mark along the edge. She leaned closer to inspect it. "Can I help you?" The voice behind her was sharp. Accusing. Yolanda stood and turned. The woman standing there wore a bright red blazer and heels that echoed loudly against the hallway tile. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a tight bun. Her expression said the conversation was already over before it had begun. "You're on private property," the woman said. "This floor is not open to the public." "I was looking at the available units," Yolanda replied calmly. She gestured toward the leasing signs on the doors. "We don't do walk-ins," the woman replied. Her eyes scanned Yolanda from head to toe. The sneakers. The sweater. The worn leather bag. The evaluation was quick. Dismissive. "You'll need to schedule through our website." "I see," Yolanda said. "I'll walk you back to the elevator," the woman said. "That won't be necessary," Yolanda replied. "I still have several floors to review." The woman's smile disappeared. "That's not possible." She stepped closer. "This building is managed by Seward Property Management. I'm the building manager." Her tone hardened. "Unauthorized visitors are not allowed to wander the property." "Your name?" Yolanda asked. The question caught her slightly off guard. "Patricia Seward." "Thank you." Patricia had already pulled out her phone. "Troy," she said into it. "I need you on the 8th floor immediately." She lowered the phone and folded her arms. "You're going to leave this building now," she said. Before Yolanda could answer, another door opened down the hallway. A thin man stepped out wearing thick glasses and holding a tablet. "What's going on?" he asked. "An authorized visitor," Patricia replied. The man's eyes moved across Yolanda carefully. "I can check the security logs," he said. "See how she got inside." "I came through the front door at 2:04 p.m., Yolanda said calmly. The entrance was unlocked and propped open by cleaning staff. The man blinked. "That's very specific." "I pay attention," Yolanda replied. The stairwell door opened behind them. Heavy footsteps entered the hallway. Troy Kendrick stepped out. His black security uniform filled the space immediately. He took one look at Yolanda. Then looked at Patricia. "Problem?" "She refuses to leave," Patricia said. Troy walked forward slowly until he was standing directly in front of Yolanda. He said firmly, "You need to leave the building." "On what grounds?" Yolanda asked. "This is private property." "Have you issued a formal trespass warning under Georgia Statute 16721? Yolanda asked calmly. Troy blinked. What? A proper trespass warning requires the property owner or authorized agent to identify the restricted area and give the individual reasonable time to leave. Troy's jaw tightened. I'm telling you now. That's a request, Yolanda said. Not a warning. I'm the head of security, Troy said. That authority would need to be documented in your contract with the property owner, Yolanda replied. Troy turned toward Patricia. Patricia's expression had changed. Just slightly. There had been emails 3 months earlier about a new ownership group. Corporate restructuring. She hadn't paid attention. No one from the new ownership had ever visited the building. This conversation is over, Patricia said sharply. Troy. Troy stepped forward. His hand closed around Yolanda's wrist. His grip was firm. Harder than necessary. Let's go, he said. Yolanda looked down at his hand on her arm. Then looked back up at him. You are now committing battery under Georgia law, she said calmly. Document whatever you want, Troy replied. He pulled her toward the elevator. She didn't fight. She didn't resist. But she kept speaking. For the record, Yolanda said clearly, I'm being physically removed from the 8th floor of 1847, Peachtree Street at approximately 3:47 p.m. No lawful trespass warning has been issued. No opportunity to comply voluntarily has been given. The elevator doors opened. Troy pushed her inside. The doors closed. The elevator began descending. And by the time those doors opened in the lobby again, the situation inside that building was about to explode into something none of them were prepared for. Because waiting outside the building were 2 police cars. And what happened when those officers stepped out would turn a simple confrontation into a criminal arrest that would make national headlines. Stay with us and follow for the next part, because the moment those handcuffs come out, everything changes. The elevator doors opened into the main lobby. Troy Kendrick stepped out first, still gripping Yolanda Briggs firmly by the arm. The marble floor reflected the late afternoon light coming through the tall windows, and a few people in the lobby turned their heads as they noticed the scene unfolding. Yolanda walked calmly beside him. She wasn't resisting. She wasn't arguing. But she continued speaking clearly, almost as if she were giving a report. For the record, she said, loud enough for the surrounding lobby to hear, I am being escorted from the building without a lawful trespass warning. No written notice has been issued. No opportunity to voluntarily comply has been given. Troy tightened his grip slightly. You can talk all you want, he muttered. You're leaving. The glass doors at the entrance slid open automatically. Outside, 2 patrol cars sat parked at the curb. Patricia Seward had called the police. The moment Troy stepped outside with Yolanda, one of the officers approached. The officer was a tall man in his 40s, his badge identifying him as Sergeant Haskell. His expression carried the tired skepticism of someone who had spent years responding to complaints that rarely turned out to be serious. What's going on here? He asked. Troy released Yolanda's arm but stayed close. She was trespassing, Troy said. Refused to leave after multiple requests. Haskell turned toward Yolanda. You want to tell me what happened? Yolanda straightened her sweater slightly and rolled her wrist where Troy's grip had left a red mark. I was never issued a lawful trespass warning, she said calmly. I entered through an unlocked public entrance. I walked through areas clearly marked as visitor accessible. I was physically seized by private security without legal authority. Haskell sighed. That's not how this works. Actually, Yolanda said, that is exactly how the law works under Georgia Statute 16721. Troy shook his head. She's been like this all afternoon. Argumentative. Acting like she owns the place. Something flickered briefly in Yolanda's expression. But it disappeared almost instantly. Haskell looked at Yolanda again. I'm going to need to see some ID. Am I being detained? Yolanda asked. I'm investigating a trespass complaint. That requires reasonable suspicion, she replied. What specific facts suggest I committed a crime if no lawful trespass warning was issued? Haskell's patience began to thin. Just give me your ID so we can sort this out. I will provide identification once you establish the legal basis for the stop. The small crowd on the sidewalk had begun to grow. Several people were watching. A few had already pulled out their phones. Haskell glanced at them. Then back at Troy. You said you asked her to leave. Multiple times, Troy said quickly. Did you issue a formal trespass warning? Troy hesitated. I told her to leave. That's not the same thing, Haskell replied. Before Troy could answer again, the glass doors behind them opened. Patricia Seward stepped outside, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. What is taking so long? She demanded. She was trespassing, Patricia said to the officer. Arrest her. Haskell looked at Yolanda. You're refusing to provide identification during an investigation, he said. That could be considered obstruction. Obstruction of what? Yolanda asked calmly. You haven't established that a crime occurred. Haskell exhaled slowly. Last chance. Show me ID. Yolanda looked around briefly. The crowd. The phone's recording. Then she spoke clearly. My name is Yolanda Briggs. She paused. I entered this building lawfully through an unlocked entrance. I was never issued a lawful trespass warning. I was physically restrained by private security. And now I am being threatened with arrest without probable cause. Haskell's jaw tightened. That's enough. He pulled the handcuffs from his belt. Turn around. Several people in the crowd gasped quietly. Yolanda did not argue. She turned slowly. The metal cuffs closed around her wrists with a sharp click. For the record, Yolanda said calmly, I am being detained at 4:12 p.m. for trespass and obstruction. I dispute both charges. Troy opened the rear door of the patrol car. Get in. Yolanda stepped inside. As the door closed, she glanced once toward the building entrance where Patricia stood watching with a satisfied expression. None of them knew the truth yet. None of them knew the woman they had just arrested owned the building behind them. And none of them realized that the recording still running on Yolanda's phone had just captured 17 minutes of footage that would soon make national news. But the moment the patrol car pulled away from the curb, the mistake they had made was already beginning to unfold. And what happened next at the police station would make the situation far worse for everyone involved. Stay with us and follow for the next part, because the moment Yolanda's attorney arrives, the entire story turns upside down. The patrol car rolled through downtown Atlanta traffic as the late afternoon sky began to fade into evening. Yolanda Briggs sat quietly in the back seat, her wrists still locked in metal cuffs behind her back. The plastic bench was warm from the sun, and the city skyline moved slowly past the tinted window. She said nothing. The officer driving, a young woman whose nameplate read Vasquez, glanced at her through the rearview mirror. You okay back there? Vasquez asked. I'm fine, Yolanda replied calmly. The cuffs too tight. They're fine. Vasquez nodded but didn't say anything else. Officers learned quickly when someone didn't behave like the typical person being arrested. Yolanda wasn't angry. She wasn't scared. She looked like someone who was waiting. The car pulled into the precinct parking lot 11 minutes later. Inside the station, the booking process began immediately. Photographs. Fingerprints. Personal belongings collected and sealed in plastic evidence bags. Her leather bag. Her notebook. Her wallet. And her phone. The phone that had been quietly recording everything. It was powered down and logged as evidence. 2 hours passed. Yolanda sat alone in a small interrogation room with grey walls and a metal table bolted to the floor. At 7:12 p.m., the door opened. A tired-looking detective stepped inside carrying a thin case file. His nameplate read Holbrook. He dropped the folder onto the table and sat down across from her. Ms. Briggs, he said. Want to tell me what happened today? I already gave a statement during booking, Yolanda replied. I'd like to hear it again. Yolanda leaned back slightly in the metal chair. I entered a commercial building through an unlocked public entrance, she said calmly. I walked through areas clearly marked as visitor accessible. I examined available office space. I was confronted by the building manager who assumed I didn't belong based on my appearance. Holbrook flipped open the file. These security images show you walking through the 8th floor for about 47 minutes. Yes. Taking notes. Yes. The manager says you were casing the property. She assumed I was a criminal because I'm black and not dressed expensively enough for her expectations. Holbrook watched her carefully. That's a serious claim. It's an accurate one. Holbrook closed the folder slowly. I'm going to be honest with you, he said. The trespass charge is shaky. The building sign welcomes visitors. You entered through an unlocked door. And the 911 call from the manager. He paused. Doesn't exactly sound like probable cause. Then why am I still here? Yolanda asked. Holbrook sighed. Because Sergeant Haskell wants this to stick. Because the property manager has connections. And because the security guard who grabbed you used to work for the department. Yolanda raised an eyebrow slightly. Troy Kendrick. Holbrook nodded. Terminated in 2019. Excessive force complaints. He's been working private security ever since. Yolanda nodded slowly. So the man who physically seized me was already removed from law enforcement for using too much force. That's correct. And the officer who arrested me ignored that information. Holbrook didn't answer. The silence was its own answer. Yolanda leaned forward slightly. This conversation is over, she said calmly. I'm invoking my right to counsel. Holbrook nodded. Fair enough. He stood and gathered the file. For what it's worth, Ms. Briggs, I don't think you did anything wrong. But what I think doesn't matter much around here. He walked out. The door closed behind him. Yolanda sat alone in the room again. 35 minutes later, the station doors opened. And everything changed. A tall woman in a charcoal suit walked into the precinct like she owned the building. Her heels echoed across the tile floor as she approached the front desk. My client, she said calmly. The desk sergeant looked up. And you are? Tamara Giles. The name alone caused several officers nearby to glance up. Tamara Giles was one of the most aggressive civil rights attorneys in the state. And she was not known for losing cases. Within 5 minutes, Yolanda Briggs was sitting across from her attorney in a private room. They held you over 5 hours without charges, Tamara said. They didn't read you Miranda. They seized your property. This is already a civil rights violation. Tamara paused. Then looked at Yolanda carefully. You expected this to happen, didn't you? Yolanda didn't answer right away. Something like it, she said. Tamara leaned forward. Yolanda, what exactly is your connection to that building? Yolanda looked at the door. Then back at her attorney. Get my bag from evidence, she said quietly. There's a document inside you're going to want to see. And when Tamara Giles opened that document a few minutes later, she realized something that would completely change the case. Because the woman arrested for trespassing earlier that afternoon owned the entire building. And once that truth came out, the careers of everyone involved were about to collapse. Stay with us and follow for the final part, because when the police realize who Yolanda Briggs really is, the consequences are immediate. The evidence bag slid across the metal table. Tamara Giles opened it carefully and pulled out Yolanda Briggs' wallet, notebook, and folded documents. The fluorescent light above them buzzed faintly as she unfolded the papers one by one. Her eyes moved quickly across the first page. Then she stopped. Her posture changed immediately. What is this? Tamara asked quietly. Yolanda didn't answer right away. She simply watched her attorney read. Tamara flipped to the second page. Then the third. The document was stamped with the official seal of the Fulton County Clerk's Office. Warranty deed. Recorded 3 months earlier. The property listed in the document was unmistakable. 1847, Peachtree Street. Tamara looked up slowly. You purchased the building? Yes. For $14 million. 14.2, Yolanda replied. Tamara leaned back in her chair. For a moment she said nothing. Then she began to laugh softly. Not because the situation was funny. Because it was about to become catastrophic for everyone involved. Do the police know this? Tamara asked. No, Yolanda said. And the property manager? No. And the security guard who put his hands on you? No. Tamara folded the document carefully and slid it back across the table. Good, she said. Let's keep it that way for about 10 more minutes. She stood and walked out of the room. In the hallway, the station had grown quieter as the evening shift began settling in. Tamara approached the front desk. I'd like to speak with Sergeant Haskell, she said calmly. The desk officer pointed toward a nearby office. 2 minutes later, Haskell stepped out. His expression was already irritated. Your client is being processed, he said. She'll likely be released with a citation. Tamara crossed her arms. That won't be necessary. Haskell frowned. What? My client will be released immediately, Tamara said. And every officer involved in this arrest should probably begin preparing their statements. Haskell's expression hardened. Are you threatening me? No, Tamara replied calmly. I'm informing you. She handed him the folded document. Haskell opened it. At first his expression didn't change. Then he read the address. Then the purchase price. Then the owner's name. He looked up slowly. You're telling me? Yes, Tamara said. The woman you arrested for trespassing today is the legal owner of the building. The silence in the hallway was immediate. Haskell read the document again. Then a third time. You've got to be kidding me, he muttered. No, Tamara said. And you may also want to retrieve the evidence bag containing her phone. Why? Because it contains a full recording of the incident. Haskell's face lost color. Recording of what? Everything, Tamara said. The confrontation. The restraint. The arrest. The statements made by your officers and the building staff. She paused. And once that recording reaches a courtroom, every person involved in this arrest will be explaining their actions under oath. Within minutes the atmosphere inside the precinct had completely changed. Doors opened. Phones began ringing. Officers moved quickly through the hallway. The same officers who had confidently processed Yolanda Briggs earlier now avoided looking directly at her. 30 minutes later the charges were quietly dropped. Yolanda's cuffs were removed. Her belongings were returned. But the story didn't end there. Within 2 weeks, Yolanda Briggs filed a civil rights lawsuit against the security company, the property management firm, and the city. The recordings were submitted as evidence. Former tenants and employees came forward. Complaints that had been ignored for years began resurfacing. The investigation expanded. The security company lost its contract. The property management company was removed from the building. Sergeant Haskell was placed under internal review. And Troy Kendrick, the man who had grabbed Yolanda's wrist and pushed her into a police car, found himself unemployed again. The same building where Yolanda Briggs had been told she didn't belong now had a new management team, new security policies, and a new owner who made one thing very clear from the beginning. Everyone who walks through those doors deserves to be treated with respect. Because justice doesn't always arrive immediately. But when the truth finally comes out, it changes everything. And stories like this happen more often than people realize. Abuse of authority. Wrongful arrests. People judged before the facts are known. That's why these stories are told. More justice stories are coming. And if you want to be part of exposing the truth and standing for accountability, make sure you subscribe and stay with us for the next story.